Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, I'm David.
And I'm Michael.
And you're listening to
The Element Podcast.
Well, as you guys probably know, we are not David or Michael. Those names get thrown around a lot around the Element headquarters here because
worldwide,
some people can't keep things straight. But one thing that is straight is that our boy Michael just showed up today.
I mean,
straight facts.
Straight as me too.
Michael is here as an intern. We'll have him on at some point in time, possibly.
Maybe.
Excited to film stuff for the fall. Fall is getting rolling, man. Like,
it is.
Hunting season is about here. Like somewhere in the continental U.S., people can hunt stuff like in August.
Yeah,
that's Alaska,
Nevada.
Nevada, maybe even
Nevada.
Tennessee sometime. Who knows, right? But like, dude, it's like finally over. Like, the doldrums of summer are coming to a close.
For those who would attempt some Western hunting especially.
Yeah.
For those who might be just kind of whitetail guy, that's still doldrum.
There's at least whitetail things to do.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
that's exciting.
Yeah, that is true.
You know, like, there's things out there to be done for whitetails besides, like, just sit around.
They got stuff on their heads.
They
you know
do.
what I mean? Finally,
They do, man.
They look like bucks.
And, you know, you don't want to be that guy who is trying to scramble around once, like, it is time to hunt, trying to get your stuff together. You need to make sure you got all your gear in line. That's a great thing to do this time of year. So this kind of sells itself, right? Like, you need good gear, and you need it. That's when it's not expensive. And right now is the First Light season opener sale. And straight up, if you want to get some pretty decent camo at like 40% off, it's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be paying full price later on and be crying. So go out there and get you some pretty decent stuff at a decent price.
Yeah, we got the link in the description. So just if you scroll down, you can click on that. And while you're listening to this podcast, you can also be perusing the First Light website for the discounts and deals that they've got on some of the stuff that they've got for sale.
All the catalyst stuff is on sale, like some good whitetail type stuff. Their whitetail pattern is a Spectre pattern, but it looks pretty good doing about near anything. I'll wear it a lot this year.
Yeah, you're going to be dressed in Spectre?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I will have gadgets as well.
Good. You're going to get your gadgets.
Well, we
and get
actually
your Spectre.
ordered some First Light stuff this week, and we were having to determine what pattern it would be in. And commonly, we would say, what pattern you want that in? And we would say, Inspector. And Tyler and I would laugh every time. So it works pretty good. That link is in the description below. Hit that thing. Go get you some First Light. So today, we are doing some of the talk about that prep work, right?
Doing some of that talk.
Doing that talk,
That's what
man.
we do.
Walking that walk and doing that talk.
Do
That's
what you
we
do, man. Do what it do.
We're actually going to talk about some trail camera stuff, specifically some cell camera stuff. Later on in the podcast, we're going to have Mark Olis on, who's with Moultrie Mobile, and he gets the camera thing from a how would you say this? A manufacturer's standpoint, right? Like he works for Moultrie, but he runs them like Moultrie Mobile. Even though like that name seems like a big company, like they kind of are like mom and pop when it comes to the way they do this stuff.
Yeah, like Mark will be taking sales calls and like troubleshooting and stuff, you know. And that's the thing. That's one of the things that I do like and appreciate about them is like their customer service is top notch. So
within that, like Mark knows about near everything about these cameras, knows more than we do. So he's going to talk some about like using cell cameras specifically, not like how to kill a deer with them, but inadvertently, yes, like how to use a cell camera. And this applies to all cell cameras, not just Moultries, but we use Moultries and we like them a whole lot. And so we're going to talk about that, but it works for all cameras, right? Like there's certain settings and different things, but Mark will tell us all about that. But before that, we're actually going to talk more about the hunting stuff because we're trying to kill deer. And a lot of us right now are, what? Like the bird?
Kill deer.
We call them kill dees
trying to
around
kill deer.
here. How do you reckon it came to be?
I don't know. I thought the same thing. The
Dees?
first time I ever saw it written, I was like, hold up. That ain't right, is it?
No,
like,
I don't understand it. Yeah, but
somebody added an R on accident.
Yeah, and now I'm in this like conundrum of do I call it a kill deer and be right or a kill D and be local?
I mean, you don't say everything right anyway. So,
I don't.
I mean, might as well just call it a kill
I
deer.
have to be a chameleon, dude. That's the deal. If I'm around people like who are birders, I call it a kill D.
Well,
I'm gonna get the stank eye.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, I always called them sika deer growing up. Some people now like to call them sika because you know it's been popular.
Yeah, because Steve said it.
Yeah,
but it's a sika. Or Sika is how, when I did game capture stuff, Sika deer is what we said.
Sika.
Like a Sika.
I've never heard called Sika.
No. Not until some guy from Michigan decided that's why they said it.
Some guy.
That's right.
Yeah. That's
but,
all right.
Yeah, man, there's different things.
Michigan people make things difficult,
Acorns,
don't they?
dadgummit. You know, like, everybody knows what an acorn is. I'm sorry if you say acorn. But did you know that pecan is technically the actual right way to say the word pecan, not pecan? You know how you know that?
Because Georgia people say it pecan.
The Indian word that it comes from has the sound pecan in it. So, and that's how it was pronounced, pecan. So that's why we actually know the answer to that. So take that, you proper people, with your pinkies out.
These people weren't in America before any of y'all.
That's right. That's right. What are you, a colonialist or something? Come on. But we are going to probably not hang any trail cameras on any pecan trees because there ain't none where I hunt. But we are going to talk quite a bit about how to hang trail cameras this time of year and kind of that early season type stuff, trying to kill deer. Right? We'll talk about the settings and stuff later. Mark's going to help us with that. But we're trying to get after bucks specifically. And who knows, maybe you actually are trying to get after does early season and kind of get those doe quotas filled or get some meat, some doe, some does ready. But, you know, maybe you're running low on meat and it's time to make sure a deer hits the ground. And that's fine too. But Tyler, what is the first thing, like, it's trail camera season right now, right?
Yeah.
TCSZN.
Baby.
That's right.
Not Thompson Center. Y'all
no, sir.
Not sponsored.
Nah, but it's funny you were talking about that. But, like, this time of year is what we have learned. Like, mid-August is probably about as early as it really benefits, especially for a public land hunter, to get out and put out trail cameras. You know, private land, it's a little different if you can manage and keep deer on your property, this and that. But, like, still, like, bucks move around and stuff, right? So, say it's mid-August and you're wanting to put out a trail camera. What's the first thing that you think about, like, as far as the location for that or where you want to hang a camera?
Man, there's some different directions I could personally go real quick. But, but I would say for me, and this may not be a great answer that you wanted, but the first thing I think about in our neck of the woods,
sure,
because it's different.
Yeah,
but
well, let's go into the different
this
stuff.
is the first thing I think about because I'm used to being around here this time of year, right? Like thickets.
Yeah.
And when I say that, usually that's like an area that has shade but also has honeysuckle or sumac or something like that in the
Thicket
area.
and brush are two things that like is more of a southern type thing to talk about. You know, like those things kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, like, and what do you mean by a thicket? Why are you thinking about that for trail cameras?
I'm thinking about bedding because I don't feel like, at least in our neck of the woods, like I said, that deer are moving too far from bedding in most days. And so I think that if you want to, locate, there's a couple things you can locate, and that'll be either, pigs, bucks, or does in most cases in those thick areas. And those are potential big game targets, I guess, which pigs aren't considered game here anyway. So, but if you find bucks, I don't think you should get too hype about it. If you find does, I think you
Find those what?
if you find those deers with no antlers on their heads, if you find that you're in doe bedding area and there's no bucks around, don't be discouraged, because I think that what you can end up with is a bedding area that will stay pretty consistent even into November and could potentially produce a good place to hunt a buck, especially if you got the right winds in that area or you got a foolproof entry or whatever.
So that's the around here.
Yeah.
Now, when you say that, you're implying that you could think about not around here too.
Yeah.
So
I do a
how
lot,
does that
actually.
change? Yeah, anywhere but here, right? Pretty popular song.
Anywhere but here.
I want to go hunt deer. So when you are thinking about that, what changes whenever you're thinking about going elsewhere?
Yeah, so a lot of the country, man, this is another question. It depends on where you're going, but if there's ag, man, that is what I'm typically thinking is like, find a place that deer will destinate in the evenings, and start a camera there.
Would you do that on beans, even though the beans are going to run out?
Yeah, I think I would.
This time of year.
I think I would. I don't know a ton about this. We don't live in beans country, but I've hunted it the last several years or a few years, and in bean country. And from what I pick up is, this is hard info to come by because it typically, you know what? Farmers don't give us much information about how things work.
They are the guys who are just like, it just does it because it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too political here. Do they do that because they don't really need to? You know what I mean? Like if
They
it
don't
works,
need to let you know?
works, that's great. They make money. If it doesn't, they still make money.
I don't know. That's a good question.
You know what I mean?
I think that there could be some of that, but so as to not offend every farmer. I don't think every guy's that way.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I think that a lot of farmers, especially the older guys, just have plowed the same row
Yeah.
for 40
Sprayed
years.
the same spray
do the
and-
same stuff, and they don't have to like be too like cutting edge. Like there's just a way to grow beans. And There's
Right.
a way to grow corn, way to grow milo, right? And it's just what you do.
Yeah, you get what
so
you get.
like I think that is a big thing a lot of times. It's like, well, I've never actually had to describe this to someone.
Yeah, you're probably
and
right.
I ain't worried about you, stupid whitetail hunter. Just get out of
Yeah,
here. You know?
yeah. Well, I feel like what you end up with is sometimes you get a deer hunter that also is a farmer, and then they still can't tell you a whole lot. But there's not great information about like the preference of beans throughout all the stages of its life during deer season. The beans life, that is. But what I understand, and I've heard several people say this, is like beans are a destination food source pretty much year round. From the time they start growing to the time they are laying dead on the ground for a month or whatever. There's just, I guess, different things that are eaten in that process somewhat. And then I think also there is like one time that beans are not very, very good, I guess, from what I understand, is when they're yellow. But at the same time, that whole field typically isn't yellow because there are low spots in the field that hold water and stuff like that. And the plant just doesn't die till later because it's such a healthy plant or whatever. So it's like any particular field could produce deer forage all year. And so, but I think I would focus on beans. I think corn is difficult, especially when we're talking about trail cameras, which is what we're doing today.
I have a better grasp of beans than I do corn as far as deer usage.
Yeah, me
this
too.
stuff is also regional, you know, because like, I don't know, if you're in a pretty lush part of the country, the deer might only use the corn in the fall. If you're in a spot where it's pivot corn, that's the only food around, and they're going to figure out a way to eat a corn stalk if they have to.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so it's like very tough.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I think what thing you can rely on, whether it's corn or beans, is that if you find entry trails into that field, say if you're hunting public or you have access to the woods right there and you can see the trails, I think that's the kicker. Is like find the best trail coming into that thing, which is usually in the back, most remote corner or whatever. If you got 10-foot corn, it doesn't matter as much for that time of year. It will whenever they cut it and it's the rut or whatever. But anyway, that's where you would, I think, focus. And so in the end, like it probably doesn't matter a whole lot corn or beans as long as there is a food source there that is tended to well and produces food for them.
I'll go ahead and say I like to do the least common denominator system on this stuff, and this doesn't always work, but I'm a big fan of alfalfa because, in my opinion, it's the easiest to figure out because it's always good and there's not a lot of math to it. It's good until it's dead, when it dies like really cold. So as long as it's got enough water to grow, it's probably the easiest for me to hunt because I know it works. Right?
I feel like that if you were to take and plant some corn and some beans and some alfalfa together, I do actually feel like the beans would be the most preferential.
Probably.
I do feel like that, but obviously there's so many variables. Like all that matches up with like where a creek bottom sits and where a thick spot is and where the does are going to be because the buck's got to go somewhere else until the rut and all these different things. And so like, you know, the only thing we can do here is kind of give out some scenarios and say this is kind of what we're looking for.
The goal is to talk about how to hang a camera over the food source to be able to kill a deer there then or later.
And at this point, like we're in August, we're trying to find deer. You know what I mean? So
we did this on Texas Public a few years back. You can get a couple different places we've done this. A picture at 2 a.m. of a big buck, most of the time, I will tell you, is useless. You know, like, and I'm not going to be rude or anything to people, but like, except on a podcast, right? Because y'all used to it. But now you get what I'm saying. Like, a buddy at church comes up and shows me a picture of some big deer on his property, and it's like 3 a.m. And in my mind, I'm like, man, that's great.
Yeah.
But
probably
you're only going to see that deer like, there's like 2 days a year, and it's probably November 14th and 15th that you're going to be able to send that. It's regional, by the way, guys. But like, you know, it's not hype unless you're backtracking this deer and you have the ability to do that. Then it's super hype, right? Because just the knowing he's there is a huge thing. So like, why not hang your camera at the place where the most deer cross, right? The most deer go to the ag. That's where you want your camera. Then you can figure more stuff out from there. And this time of year is a great time to do that because you have time to figure things out.
Yeah. I mean, you still got time. Like if you're an October 1 opener or so, like everybody or a lot of people are, you have still, you know, if we're talking about getting cameras out in early to mid-August, you've got a month and a half, you know, before you got to really, you know, have your plan right, pretty much.
Yeah, but the bucks are what they are now. Like they've grown, they have most of their antler.
Yeah. You will most likely know a shooter at this point, and so that's good. And you have 6 weeks to find where this buck is bedding if you want that. And here's the thing: is you do want that, but you may not want to find his bedding until mid-September. You know what I mean?
Because it can change.
It's likely to change. I think in a lot of cases, and I think that depending on where you are, parts of the country, most of the parts of the country, whenever they kind of are coming out of velvet, that's kind of when they change that to that fall range. And when we've seen it here, and this where we hunt around here is like just as difficult as it gets. It's as not normal as it gets. It's like deer here are just not like the rest of the deer. Like you hear about people in the Midwest and the upper Midwest and how deer react and stuff, and you know how they interact with their habitats and their seasons and people and everything. And these deer are different. And still, we do see a fall like relocation, or we have at least. I mean, we were all over the bucks in the summer of 2017. Like,
Yes.
we had only daylight pictures of these deer coming back to bed right there next to the camera. And basically, the last 3 weeks of September, they seemed to disappear. And we still gave them a shot on opening day, which is like October 1 or 2. It was a cold front, massive cold front. Like never this cold on October 2.
Like high of like 60.
Yeah.
That's good for us.
Casey and I hunted all day, had a great wind, great access to this place, and did not see a deer, right?
Deer was gones.
We didn't see a doe or anything.
We saw
in this
pigs
area.
one time.
We saw
I
pigs
think,
in the morning.
which is not a good thing
That was
when you're trying to kill deer.
That was actually when I decided for sure that I didn't want to hunt all day anymore. And I still have a few times. Like, I've done it at least once a year probably since then.
Well, one of the dumbest things you can do is let your buddy talk you into hunting a all-day sit in Texas for the opener. It's probably real bad.
Hey, I'm a dumb guy sometimes, man.
Yeah, well, you're hanging out with a dumb guy, too, and that's how it goes.
Is it like dumb squared around
It is.
here?
It's Dumb and Dumber. Okay. So that's on a food source.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. How are you going to kill that deer? What's that process look like?
Man, there's
don't tell me draw your bow. I want you to,
yeah. You got to shoot them in the right spot.
That's right.
So there are different ways to kill what you're finding on a food source.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what you'll see is like when they transition, say you pick them up here before the velvet sheds, and then he transitions and disappears. I think that you can find where the does are most heavily coming into that food source throughout the fall. And like even after, depending on when crops come out, say they come out or whatever, even after that, like figure out where these does are most heavily using that field or that food source and try to hunt there during the prime rut. Mm-hmm. Because that deer is, I think, potentially likely to revisit that area during the rut. Mm-hmm. He knows that area.
It's home.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like he spends time there.
Yes. It might not be fall core range, but he'll
end up back there.
And quite honestly, dude, like these core ranges, home range, all that stuff, those are terms that I would almost say, and I might get chastised for this, but I almost say that the hunting industry has come up with this stuff a little bit. Now, there is some data out there to back it up, but it's regional too, depending on where you're at.
It's individualistic.
Yeah, absolutely it is. But like, say remember we were flying into Chicago the other day, and in like northern Illinois, it is flat as a pancake, and there's just a few trees here and there. Mm-hmm. Like those deer, like they have to live in the cover. Mm-hmm. They can't go too many places. Yeah. It ain't just out west where like you have a different look. Like there's some places out east where it's still like deer don't always have to move.
Yeah.
You might have the same buck doing the same, living in the same 40 acres all year long. So don't think it's like a thing that has to happen.
No, that's actually a really good point and something that I was thinking about earlier. I'm glad you made it. And that's something, to also consider. So if the buck does not relocate, or if you find this deer in mid-September and you find his quote unquote core range here, like he's close by in daylight, then or close to daylight. I guess he's at last light at the field edge. A way to go find him and kill him is to basically hop on a map. If you know that area pretty well, you can do this from a map. You might have to. If you have to get boots in there, then you can definitely mess things up. But if you've had boots in there and you know how to correlate different types of habitat, we talked about this actually in our little clinic or whatever it was at Cabela's a few weeks back. We had a question about this. And if you have spent time in there during different times of the season, different times of the off season, the postseason, and that kind of thing, and you now can take a map and go, okay, when it looks like that, that's thick. When it looks like that, those are actually oak trees, and there's nothing underneath them, right? So those things. That is super helpful this time of year because you don't have to get in there and mess things up.
Yeah, and actually on OnX right now, you can get on there, and they have, I think, like 3 or 4 different tree layers. You can do deciduous versus coniferous, which pretty much means evergreens and then trees that lose their leaves. You can do red oaks versus white oaks. You can do like young aspens. There's all kinds of different layers you can turn on that thing to kind of help you navigate, like hardwood timber versus bottomlands and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, if you put the pines or evergreens or whatever and all the oak layers on and they're not showing up in that thick little spot, then that's like a lower young story, understory of brush, basically. So anyway, basically that's what you want to do is see like where is this buck potentially coming from. He's going to be in some thicker stuff and he's going to be in a remote place where people don't go, and it might actually be fairly close to somebody's house. It might be the backyard of an old lady's house, kind of, like it might be 100 yards off her back porch, but if she doesn't go there, then that's a potential. So finding those potential spots where he might be, and basically following trails from the field edge where you're picking him up back to those areas. And if you can stay on a trail that goes into that and drop that camera a little bit further back, say 200, 300, 400 yards back, you get that deer in daylight, and that's how you kill him on opening day. I mean, that's how you do it.
Dude, talk about getting me pumped. And the way to do that too is to go in and hang and hunt and do that. And
you don't want to go in there and set a trail camera and get out of there quick. You don't want to go in there and set a tree stand or something like that, or you don't want to hang sticks in there while you're messing around.
I wouldn't do none of that stuff. I'd go in there, and this is when you can kill one in the morning too, because you don't go in there and maybe run the risk of bumping up a deer or whatever. Who knows? Maybe your trail camera will tell you, but there's a chance he's hanging out at the food stores and at like a bedding staging area before he gets back to this spot. You get in there real early. Go in, bring your saddle stuff with you. We're going to use a cruiser saddle because they're super comfortable. You can sit your all day long sit that Tyler's talking about.
If you didn't get the fact that we were dumb,
it's because we weren't hunting in a saddle.
That's right.
That's
man.
right, dude.
I mean, we actually were hunting some really hard tree stands.
Yeah, hard to hang too.
My booty was hurting.
Yeah, that's the other nice thing about this.
We were kind of loud that morning too, if I remember correctly.
Probably.
That's another thing. This is a reason why, and I'm not saying I won't hunt out of a tree stand ever again, but this is a reason why the hang and hunt out of a saddle is so awesome, is you've got a platform that you can manage with one hand, even if you're just a young intern that's very skinny. Like, you can manage this, you know what I mean? And you're not making a bunch of noise and stuff. There's less moving parts.
And
it's a good thing.
There's cloth stuff.
Yeah.
Now, you can still get some clanks and clangs, but still, like, when most of your system is cloth, it's way quieter, and it makes a big difference. And I think that it's just not a better hang and hunt tool. Now, if it's cold and you are hunting like a annual or perennial tree stand or whatever, tree stands are real nice. Ladder stands are even nice in that situation. But to be mobile and to make moves on deer, it's hard to beat a cruiser saddle for sure. Now, let's take this a different direction. We've backtracked this deer from a destination agriculture food source. Let's go hunt some different deer.
Okay.
A lot of the country in the preseason and early season experiences acorn fall or acorn fall, depending on where you're at. You might even say it different. I can't even pronounce another way to say it, but that's a little bit different of a hunt, I feel like. And it's not as much of a backtrack them to it as it is to find the hot spot. How do you find that hot spot, and then how do you hang a camera accordingly to get you some information?
You're talking about hunting over acorns, right?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would the first thing that I'm doing is I'm not looking for an acorn tree that's dropping on the field edge. It looks beautiful. It looks awesome. Like, we were walking down in Illinois with Isaac, walking down this field edge, and I looked up and I was like, man, there's going to be acorns falling from that tree pretty heavy. And you could kill a deer there for sure. But I think that what I'm looking for is, like you said, you can turn on this on the map on X, or you can just go in there and find stuff. You can also look for tree crowns from fields and stuff like that back in there and pull your binos up and identify that is a white oak tree back in there. It's
when you
really
say
big.
looking for tree crowns, you mean like on the aerial looking for a big tree is that what you mean?
No,
by that?
but you can do that.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I was thinking more like you pull down the road, you get a look back at some timber across the field.
Oh, yeah.
You want to get some perspective. You don't want to be right up on the edge of the timber, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to be looking at it from distance. Pull your binos up, look at the leaves, and go, yeah, I think those are white oaks. I'm going to go in there and look. You want to be back in the timber, I think. You want to be potentially, if you're in ridge country, I think you want to be, on the end of ridges or, up, somewhere on top of a ridge potentially in a saddle. Mm-hmm. This is something we talk about a lot, but pairing multiple attributes that are advantageous for you in an area is the best way to kill deer. Mm-hmm. You can't just take and go, I want to hunt acorns because they're going to eat acorns, and just think that you can't feel confident. I don't feel like if you just go in there and hunt a tree. You got to have multiple reasons why this works. So that's what I would look for is stuff back in the timber a little ways. It's going to get darker earlier back in there, but the deer are going to feel more comfortable. And I think if you get some sort of a little, even if it's a small cold front, especially if you brought some wind and it knocks some of those acorns off the tree, I think you have a very good chance of killing deer. Now, I think you're going to want to hunt, like a lot of people have white oaks. I think you're going to want to hunt white oaks earlier in the season. So as far as hanging a trail camera, going in and finding those, KC is really good. I am better now than ever, but he's always been really good at bringing his binos every time he's in the woods pretty much. And so he's always able to look up at a tree and go, there's a bunch of acorns on that one right there, So let's hang a camera right in here underneath this thing. And there's so many advantages to running a cell camera, but this is one of them where like that tree could all of a sudden just knock down a bunch of acorns in about 3 days, and it's just hammer time. And you
how
don't
many
know
times
it.
years back do we miss that because we weren't running?
Dude, so we
cell
have
cams.
what are called shoemard trees or shoemard oaks in our area. They're red oaks, but they have a big acorn that's like almost the size of a white oak. And there was one year where we missed it, and we were like, we've been waiting ever since for that year to happen again and for us to do something about it. But like it was hammered underneath where they had all fallen, and they fall kind of early. So and they fall before deer season a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so like that's an issue too, where, if you're not in the woods, you don't know they're falling. Mm-hmm. And so
this also works for persimmons too. You know, it's not just oak trees, but anything that's a mast that the deer are targeting, it's a thing to do. And those are kind of the two main ones that are going to be fall specific that you can think about. Now, this situation, I'm always thinking about an evening hunt. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times it's open hardwoods kind of in the places where these are, so the deer aren't like, as long as your access is good, you're not intruding too much into bedding and messing things up. Mm-hmm. You're waiting on the deer to move to you to come eat the acorns, right? And depending on what part of the country you're in, like you were saying a while ago, it gets pretty hot and heavy because it's all of a sudden like, oh my goodness, look at this ample amount of food. It's hog time. And because deer, specifically bucks, they are not stupid. God has made them to where like it's time to chow down before the rut. They get to be in really, really good shape, and they put on the feed bag. Kind of like bears
acorns
do.
are rich in fat.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's like it is a good thing for them to eat, and they will hit it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm always thinking about is trying to do a hanging hunt or even a pre-hung set where you are in that really good spot. Now, there's a lot of guys who, I guess, take the trail cam out of it a little bit here. I know we're talking about how to hang cameras in these situations to kill deer, but there's some guys who don't do that, and I think that this is a thing where people are hunting large tracts of timber, like, say, some of the national forests and stuff you can hunt, where they take the approach of hunt the hot sign instead. I've never really done that too much. Have you ever done the hunt the hot sign thing?
I mean, I know I have done it. I'm not saying I've done it successfully, though, and I can't think of a time. If we're talking about, like, feeding type stuff. Now, as far as, like, rut sign, I can think of a few instances where I have hunted the hot sign, but I've always had, like, a very, like, when I look at maps, I mean, I I want to pick the tree.
Yeah, sure.
And so, and
I'm never, shouldn't say never. Ideally, I know where I'm headed when I leave out, if I'm heading out with a saddle set up. Now, if I'm going to hunt on the ground and I'm stalking around, that's one thing. But I hardly am ever like, I want to go hang in a tree and I don't know where. Because that's a good way to walk around for 5 miles and not end up in a tree. We've done that a few times.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
When we're stupid.
Yeah.
But, like, I think a lot of guys, especially, and this is stuff I'm learning from other hunters that I see and talk on the podcast and stuff. Like, take some of our buddies from Midwest Whitetail. This is a thing that they do from time to time, especially on those urban hunts, right? Where they go in, find some white oaks that are dropping, and pair that with some fresh rubs that are there. They know a buck is using the area, probably eating those, and can just hop in a tree right there and hunt.
Yeah.
Can be very effective, it would seem.
Yeah.
I haven't done it. We don't really live in an area that's conducive for that, and oftentimes that time of year, I'm in a different I'm either hunting locally or I'm in a different part of the country where that's not really the thing you do. Because I'm saving those states for rut hunts.
Right. One thing that comes to mind for me is, I am going to pick a very, very specific spot when I go in. I may not even pick the tree, but I will likely be in a spot that's 50 yards within a 50-yard circle. You know what I mean? And so, I was thinking in 2020 at the end of the year, I ended up going in with a specific spot in mind and ended up hunting actually closer. So I didn't actually hunt super. I got probably hunted 2/3 of the way in from where I wanted to go actually, but I ended up killing first time in, and I killed off a hot sign, and that was why. I went in all the way, nearly all the way. And as I'm getting in there, the sign's getting a little less, and I start looking at my map, and I'm like, there's not much sign right here, and if I keep going, it actually looks like it potentially could get worse for a few reasons. One being that there's just not a lot of habitat, further back in there, and I might have just walked right through where all the deer were, and I actually did. And so I was real slow, came back real quiet, set up real quiet, 2/3 of the way in from where I was. And literally, I'm filming what we call B-roll, which is just landscape shots. I want to set up, tell the story of where I'm at. I want people to know, what
where
the area looks like. Yeah, Oh, don't worry, they'll figure that out. No, I want people to have I don't want them to just see something and not have a perspective. And I want to film these wide shots so that people can see what I'm hunting. I literally am filming the first shot of this creek crossing that I had seen potentially on the map, and also when I got there, I did see it, and a shooter buck is in my frame whenever I was recording, and I was like, oh, holy smokes, And so from then it was just haywire, it was nuts, and it was because those deer were living right there. And I was just happened to be on the right side with the wind going in, and happened to be very quiet, which it happened to be. I intentionally tried to do these things, but sometimes it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
So that was a particular instance where I can say I did hunt the hot sign, but most of the time I am picking a tree that I want to hang in. And then when you get there and there's hot sign, that gives you a good feeling. You know what I mean? Because you got the map and the reasons you said that was a good spot on the map, and that correlates with whoa, there's hot sign here. This is going to be awesome. You know what I mean? It's working out. So
yeah, absolutely, dude, and that makes you excited. Okay, now let's take it to a different direction.
Okay.
Again, for preseason and then early season. I call early season pretty much everything until the rut starts. So about November, right? So that's still early. I know that you could go into all 37 phases or whatever they come up with, right? But leading into the rut is still what I call early season. It's probably wrong, but that's what I do.
Some people call it pre-rut, so if that helps you think about it.
Yeah, so the scrape thing is a little bit different, and it kind of stands alone. There is deer sign, and then above deer sign there is scrapes, particularly perennial scrapes, in our opinion. It does not get much better. The only better deer sign that there can be is a actual buck standing there, right? Which you saw, like you were talking about earlier, in your frame. Yeah. But there's an approach that we use, and it's real particular, and we can't even always accomplish it because it's very dependent upon like the particular scrape. But there's this like perennial scrape thing that we do where we go out early season or preseason rather and try to find a scrape to hang a camera over that's going to in turn help us kill deer over that scrape. Mm-hmm. How does that really look and work?
So I think you have to think about it with a lot of different, like same thing. There's a lot of different variables involved. The best way to take and find these places on a map that I can think about is to find where like multiple avenues of travel intersect potentially. So say there's a fence line, a brushy fence line, or an irrigation ditch. And if it ends up like leading into a creek system and they come together at like a 90 and they both go separate ways. So think of it as like a cross or something like that, you know, just like 4-way meeting, right? An intersection. At that intersection is a good place, and say it's all ag on the quadrants of this thing. At that intersection is a good place to potentially find a big scrape that was there at one point. It may be perennial, or you know, it may be used like throughout the summer, and it may not. It may be, but if it's a big scrape, you can still find it there, and know that like at some point you can kill there. But I think that like finding things like that come together, you could find like, so if you got a similar thing where you got like two field corners that come up adjacent to each other, there may be big blocks of timber on both sides, but right there it's kind of creating a little pinch right there. And you've got deer that can come from this big block of timber like to the southeast and the big block to the northwest or whatever. Right in that area between those two pinches, to field corners, that's a great place on the inside of the woods there to find something like that. And then outside of like things like that, there's other ways, but like just getting out in the woods is important to find those things.
Absolutely. And that was where I was going to do the follow-up or like talk about this is like this is like one of those things. It's kind of like predicting big buck movement and saying you're going to go shoot a big deer. You can do it a whole bunch, but 95% of the time you're going to be wrong. And it's the same thing with this finding scrapes like this, you know, like you got to cover ground to find it. That's just the only way to do it.
Because most of the time at those intersections, you're not going to find a like year-round used scrape. Like you're just not going to in most situations, I don't think. Yeah, because we've seen that at least.
It's real particular.
Yeah,
it
just happens.
You know, truth be told, we haven't found one yet this year that seems to be that, and that's okay because we can kill deer other ways too. But what we're trying to tell you is like it is the thing if you can find it.
Yes,
like. And there's a particular scenario that works, right? And your 2020 Illinois buck is the scenario.
Yeah.
We summer scouted this place, found one of these scrapes, hung a camera over it. Weren't using cell cameras then. I can't imagine, you know, using a Moultrie Mobile over one of those things.
Freaking out.
Oh, and that's the thing. You have to be mature. You have to be able to handle it.
Yeah, that's right.
Because if you're freaking out, because we had deer on that thing all year long, big, giant bucks. Right?
Yeah.
The one you shot wasn't even the biggest on the camera or that you saw that day.
Yeah.
And he's still the biggest 8-point I've ever seen in real life. Okay. So, like, you have to have patience. You have to have discipline and know the time to strike. And the time to strike is a late October cold front.
Yeah. I mean, if we had, I don't remember, because I just don't, it's not in my mind that I remember this for sure, but I think that if we had hunted that location prior to, or no, if we'd hunted prior to when I killed and from opening day, I don't think there was a daylight of a mature buck in there.
Your buck was there one time with maybe 5 minutes left in shooting light.
I don't think so.
And as thick as it was.
I think it was dark.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, as thick as it was, it's probably too dark to shoot.
I mean, it was in the night. Like, he was completely glowing and checking the scrape. But he didn't show up till that week before. And like at all. And we had some bigger bucks on that camera all summer that were there in daylight. And like from October 1 till the day I killed, which was the 23rd, I don't think we had a buck that was bigger than 2.5 years old in the daylight on that camera.
And what Tyler's saying is that you go in there because you're like, it's October 15th cold front. It's going to be awesome. No, what's going to happen is you're going to come in 10 minutes after shooting light, and you're going to bust those bucks, getting getting yourself down, and you're going to mess up the whole thing because they are sensitive, right? You killed that deer on the 23rd of October, if I remember right. It was a great cold front, great setup. First time in, went in and killed the deer. Given that evening, through a lot of situations, y'all got busted in the tree. Because there was a snowman up there moving around in the tree who wasn't Tyler. And a big buck saw you, and then the buck that you saw, who's also a big buck you shot, you then went in and recovered that deer, but did it pretty quickly, right? But that was enough for those deer to pretty much not show back up on that camera the rest of the year.
And another point that I'm trying to make, too, is like, the deer that I almost shot that got busted was a monster, and I had him at 8 yards, and I don't believe he was on the camera. He was on the camera all summer in daylight most of the time, like from the point where you didn't know what he was going to be almost to the point that he's like fully hard horned. And he's on daylight. And I think that once October 1 was there, maybe whenever it was in September, the last time he showed up, like if I'd have gone in there thinking, I'm going to go kill this deer, he's coming in daylight in early September or whatever, or mid-September. If I'd have gone there on October 1, I could have really stunk that area up and messed the whole thing up, as opposed to waiting, like you said, to a late season or a late October cold front and seeing both that buck and the new buck that showed up the week before in the dark. So, like even trying to get on an early season pattern on October 1, it can work. But I think that a cell camera can help you with that because up to the minute, like September 30th, that buck was in there in the daylight. So I'm going to go in on October 1st and kill him, right? But if you're not using a cell cam, then you either go in there to mess it up, pull the card on September 30th and potentially mess it up, or you just, wait for a cold front, but you don't know that buck stopped showing up after he shed velvet or he, whatever it is. There's something that changes right there around the first or middle of September that causes a lot of deer, even deer that are homebodies, like the big one that I saw, to do something different. And, like that buck may have relocated his core range after he shed velvet, but we saw him hard horn in daylight. We got video on the trail camera of him.
He's doing like a lip curl.
Yeah,
it's cool. Yeah,
and then I saw him again that night, like in late October. So he was there, but I just don't think he was there in daylight from mid-September or whatever on.
That has to do a lot. My hypothesis is that has to do with the testosterone level rising. And it's like a natural impulse of theirs. Not that they are avoiding hunters, and I think deer can learn to do that too. But I think that they all get mad at each other. So there's this dispersion that happens of like kind of spreading out and not being homeboys with each other.
200 yards over there instead. Yeah,
and then also there's like some level of like, even on big mature bucks, hey, I kind of need to just stay in this spot because if I go out there, 4-year-old over here might think he's big and bad and come stick me in the butt while I'm having my head down eating or whatever, like there's this whole like sudden raised level of danger from other bucks that they experience,
different social dynamic between the herd there.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really good point. I think that is definitely what is going on there.
It's a bigger part of the October lull than anything else.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on there. Like that, I hadn't even thought about that, but that I would almost guarantee you that is the thing. Like deer, I've been able to hunt some pretty cool properties over the years, and I've seen a lot of deer interactions, and deer are like, they are spooky of a big deer with pointy things on its head.
Oh yeah. And you can, I know people talk about them, and they do exist from time to time. Some deer are just fighters and are that way, but a lot of times the biggest, most mature buck can still be pretty wary of another buck.
He may fight 2 times a year or something.
We could go back to the deer you were talking about in the creek. right? That in 2020, he was probably the most mature buck in the area. And then a 2-year-old ran right at him because they got weird.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, he freaked out.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I don't know what to do with this deer that's coming at me, you know? And it's because it's just like deer, for sure, on the fight or flight scale are all about the flight when they can be.
Oh, yeah. Like, if they don't know what's going on, they're flighting.
Yes.
I mean, and that's what happened with the buck that I actually shot there in Illinois. Was the big one got spooked, ran through the only gap in that thick area right there, and ended up, like, busting this deer, and he freaked out. He didn't put his head down and try to knock antlers with this deer.
I said, I'm out.
He freaked out. And I don't think he was subordinate necessarily, because from what I understand from the guy who's in the tree with me, he told me that these deer were, like, mad at each other.
They're squaring off.
I couldn't see them. He said they were mad, and they were, puffed up and whatever. So I don't think that either one of them was necessarily scared of the other, but in a minute where he doesn't know what's going on, right? So, one thing that, as far as, like, hanging a camera there, this, like you said, the cell cam would have been ideal. We hung it sort of high. That's another thought about scrape cameras, is potentially to hang it kind of high so that it stays out of the buck's view. But, I don't know. I think that, like, one thing you want to do with a scrape camera is you want to make – this was key for me, is we ended up hanging it on the best tree we could find. It ended up being good because we could tell where the deer were coming from. And in that situation where we were at, it's thick in there, I needed to know what tree to hang into, so I was ready for a shot. And I mean, the buck that I ended up shooting was at 20 yards ready to give me a shot whenever things hit the fan, right? And so I was set up right, but that was because we had previous knowledge, and I went in there and pulled the card too, that those deer were coming from a particular direction overall. It didn't happen every time, but if you can be like, 70-80% of the time these deer are coming down this trail to enter this scrape, then you can hunt well, because you're hunting potentially a wind that seems favorable to them, but isn't, because they say it's a just off wind, just to say the cliche statement, but like it is. And that's where, like, taking a camera and pulling all the stuff together to make just the perfect hunt is just as cool as it gets. It is,
man. So we actually have notes here about what we're going to talk about in this podcast, and I didn't follow them at all. Sorry, Tyler, but it worked out pretty good. Here in a second, we're going to get Mark on to talk more about the settings type stuff to talk about with this deal. But I do want to talk about one other thing that you might want to hang a camera over, and that's water, because we actually have had some success with this. It's somewhat difficult, because water usually means that there's not as many things to strap a camera to, because a lot of times along the water's edge you either have, like, wispy little trees or you have water itself, so it's kind of hard to get the footage of the deer or the pictures of the deer taking a drink. Now, we had success doing this over a what we call a pila, which is like a tank that sits at the base of a windmill, and that is a lot easier to do because there's stuff around it. You have 360 degrees around that to use, as opposed to, like, a lake shore or something, whatever, I don't know, but that has half of your area you can't hang a camera on, right?
Yep.
So what is the tactic behind hanging a camera over water? What are you trying to get there?
Well, simply put, you're trying to get a deer that is, like, thirsty, right? You're trying to get them coming to satiate or satisfy their thirst. And so, this is one thing. Our buddy Tony Peterson,
he's kind of the man on this.
He is. He is the man when it comes to water. I think it's pretty much well known that he knows a lot about that kind of stuff. He will sit there and tell me that this is so hard for me to overcome. He tells me that sometimes you can just get down on water and just hunt. Don't matter which way the wind's blowing, you can, you're going to end up maybe winding some deer or getting winded, and some of the deer are not going to wind you because they're going to come from different areas. Now, for a lot of us, just say we're hunting more Midwest stuff or Eastern stuff, and you've got this water that's in the woods. it matters. And I don't know. I don't want to go against what Tony says here because I think he 100% is right in some situations, or probably a lot of the situations he hunts. But in some situations, I think that, like especially on private property, you have a buck that you want to shoot because he's on your private, and that's the only buck that you've seen on camera. You don't want to just sit there and let your wind swirl around. Like, you want to be pretty sure what you're doing there. And this is where a camera comes in.
Now, there's a deal here where it's like you can go down there and kill a deer. Mm-hmm. But if you can put the wind in your favor and still do it, why not?
Yeah.
And I'm sure Tony would agree with that.
No, he definitely would.
Yeah.
But like I said, if it's a private deal, like he's talking about hunting public grounds mostly. Mm-hmm. So if it's a private deal, man, like you want to make sure like you know where this deer's bedding from. So I think that the main idea when you're hanging on water is that a lot of times deer are going to drink out of a fairly small water source. It's going to be a smaller tank or pond or whatever. You're going to want to figure out where, and you can see this, KC is really good at figuring this stuff out, but like you can see where a deer or most of the deer are coming up to this pond. You can, like, there's always, especially like if we're talking early season like we are right now, you can see as that lake or pond starts to draw down, lots of tracks in the mud. The grass, it's no longer grass growing on the edges of the pond because it's shrunken down into the dirt.
Man, if you can find a place, like if you can hunt an area that doesn't have hogs too, this helps so much.
Yeah, for sure. And so if you don't have hogs, it's really, really pretty easy to see where the majority of these deer are coming up and drinking. Knowing that's probably the place you want to aim your camera, and you can see, you want to make sure that you can get in frame which direction these deer are coming from, or what you assume is the direction. Therefore, if it's not, you can make other predictions. But that way you know what direction they're coming from, and you know what wind to hunt it on. And so you don't want to hunt it. This is something I think that you got to make sure, but you don't want to hunt. I don't think you want to hunt. I don't know. Maybe on a water source it's different because they need water sometimes, but I don't think you want to hunt it on a directly 180-degree wind from the direction they come from.
Think about this. I mean? Yes, I'm with you for sure, and I'm going to affirm that for you. The buck we're referring to that I killed, it's actually a film that hasn't been released yet. I'm super stoked to put it out. If you came to the event that we did at Cabela's in Austin here a while back with On X, like you got to see the footage of that thing. It was pretty sick. That deer did a J-hook to come to that water.
He sure did. That's right.
I thought he was going to walk past us, and I was crying. And then he kind of almost decided he had gone far enough, and then came over to where we were to J-hook into the water source. Because when he came out, I thought I was going to have to shoot him at 50 yards, and I didn't really want to have to do that.
Down that other trail.
Yes, exactly. Yep. But no, that didn't happen. Y'all will just have to watch the footage. The vector arrow flew very, very true, as they always do in that thing.
You know what?
And what?
What's the straightest thing from point A to point B?
A straight line.
It's a vector. And you know what? At 12 yards or whatever, 14 yards, they're pretty straight.
Pretty straight, man. It's a pretty flat trajectory
I
right
love shooting 12-yard shots,
yes,
dude.
And when it sounds like one goes through a watermelon, you can hear the whole sound. It's real cool. So this is a place where we hung that camera over that Pila, and that deer did exactly that. We had got a picture of a shooter buck on that. I don't think it was him. I think it ended up being a different deer. It's hard to say. But it worked out okay, so I'm fine with it. But anyways, that deer came out probably at from where I'm sitting in my saddle. That deer is probably at a 7 o'clock where he first came into view. He then walked around the clock face all the way up to almost high noon.
Dude.
What?
I just remember because we had to set up 10 yards from each other.
Yeah.
The greatest thing,
weird.
The great thing about saddles is you can get into some tiny trees. The hardest thing about filming your buddy in a tiny tree is that you can't sit in the tiny tree with him.
The weebles wobble and they wiggle real bad.
So and that's another reason we got in different trees is so we could wiggle our own trees, and we knew who actually messed it up.
Yeah.
But I just remember we had a little buck that almost got an arrow that showed up before this buck.
I was sitting there debating. I was like, I don't want to have to shoot this small deer, but I really want to shoot something.
Yeah.
And then
we're sitting there looking, and he turns and looks, and I'm like, oh yeah. And so I look over at KC. And he looks right back at me, and we like made the eye contact thing, like, yeah, there's another one coming here. We can see. And so then I can see KC start looking, and I can see the buck before KC because I guess the trees are in his way or whatever. And so I'm just waiting on him to see it. And when he sees it, he like turns his head real slow, like, like trying not to get seen.
Freaking out.
And he's like, gives me the big eyes, It's like, oh yeah, I was so dang excited.
I remember looking over and you just giving me a head nod whenever I finally can get my eyes.
I was like, I got it, dude. I'm on this thing with the camera.
And that's the thing that, like, if you don't film your hunts, or especially if you don't have a camera guy, then like you don't ever really think too much about this. But like, there's this thing of like, I've seen the deer. Does the other person see the deer? Yep. And that's what I was confirming. And I look around and your head's nodding. I'm like, oh, we got this, bro. The A-team, the buck truck is about to lay it down.
Buck truck. Buck truck.
And it happened. And that, like, there's never been another deer that a cell camera helped me kill more than that deer right there. It was absolutely crazy because you and I neither are Tony Peterson. Therefore, we don't have the confidence in the water that he does.
Yeah.
But I'm building that. And between Tony telling me information that works and the Moultrie mobile camera telling us that the deer were actually using that, we're able to put that plan together and shoot a big buck.
Dang,
and that's going to come out soon, right?
I think like about a month from now. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it might be a little longer than that.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know either. We got a calendar of videos, and so we don't really know the calendar, but it's on the calendar.
It's coming soon, guys. So get hype about that. But right now, we're actually going to go to the interview we did with Mark Olis, where he talks more about the setting stuff on these cameras.
Super
that way,
helpful.
Yeah, it is, because it's one of the great benefits of having a cell camera is being able to put it out there and not having to go back to get it. And there's a lot of stuff to that, as well as the way that the app can help you navigate this world and find bucks to kill. So let's actually just let Mark talk about that.
All right, so now on the phone we've got Mark Olis from Moultrie Mobile. Mark, what's happening, dude?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. It's great to be back on with you guys, and we're just rocking and rolling in summer here, and it's, of course, like you guys, nice and hot here in Alabama, and just got deer season on our minds. Yeah,
man, we do too. It's crazy, but like, it's so hot, man, this time of year. But like, it really, there is like a change in the light, the way that the sun is, the angle of the sun, and you can just, if you've been around on the earth long enough, you kind of get this feeling this time of year where you're like, oh, that sun is kind of looking like fall a little bit,
A little more yellow.
Yeah. A little more angle
That's
to
right.
it. So anyway.
It's really trail camera season for a lot of folks, which is exciting. But it's also kind of like the worst of the seasons. Not because the trail cameras are the worst, but it's because hanging trail cameras like preseason is one of the toughest things there is.
A little bit stressful.
Gosh, stressful, hot as all get out. Good way to pass out. About 2 years ago, Tyler and I were hanging cameras on public land. We nearly died. Like, got out there way too far back, didn't have enough water, and just, sweating our tails off. And yeah, it's kind of rough, man. But it is exciting to be able to start getting those pictures rolling in,
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know how it is by you guys, but I've been out putting up some cameras here recently, and man, the chiggers are terrible right now. And I'm sitting here scratching my legs while we talk. So yes, it's a tough time of year, but it's necessary and exciting all at the same time.
Yeah, it is, man. It's necessary because this is, from about now until most people's opening days, it's a good time to find a buck to hunt on opening day, And one thing that I really like to do also, or one way I can utilize the information is, even on cameras that I don't necessarily pick up bucks in velvet or whatever right now in August and early September, even on cameras where I'm seeing mostly just does, it's still something that you can hunt and use to your advantage. And so, for instance, if you got a bunch of does, they're probably not going to move like a buck will when he strips velvet sometimes. Like those bucks will change their summer range and stuff. So like a lot of times you have trouble getting on them early because, even the information that you find in the first week of September, changes because those deer strip velvet and move somewhere for some reason. And so, if you don't have an early opener, that can be tough. But knowing that you've got does in the area is a good thing for November, because they're not going to move nearly as much and relocate in these different ranges like bucks are used to having to do. And so, that's one thing I like about running cameras this time of year. It really can be, it doesn't matter if you get a target buck or not, you still can use this stuff to kill good bucks, at some point during the season.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And, on our particular property here in East Central Alabama, that's typically what happens. We get our cameras up and we can run feeders here. So we'll go ahead and get those running because that's a good way for us to kind of take inventory on what's living on our place. So we do that. But, we're big into the food plots too. And we do the soil samples. So we've got really, really nice food plots and the deer absolutely hammer them. But, it's not until the early season isn't when we see a lot of our bucks on our property. It's actually, once those acorns are done and once you get some of that frost killing off the green vegetation, that's when we see the influx of bucks coming in because at that point our food plots are they are the draw and those bucks are coming in and we've got the late rut here, right? So we're not a November rut. So we've got all season that our bucks are kind of in that pre-rut phase until January. But what's bringing them in is the groceries, and because we've got those cameras out, those does are in that spot for a reason. They're not going to leave the food, cover, and water. So those bucks are going to be there, just like you said, later on if they're not there already.
Yeah. We've been using the Moultrie stuff like we've told people like for the last couple of years, and the Moultrie mobile base. You guys are introducing some new cameras that have some really cool technology as well. They've done well for us, and one thing that we like to do, this time of year is try to get some hogs. Hogs will get on a really good pattern this time of year, and you've got a consistent weather pattern with a southeast wind, that's just hot every day. And so if you get them coming daylight at the end of the day because it's cooling off a little bit and they're tired of sitting around, like that's a pattern you see every day. And so we in particular use these things, especially the cellular types of these cameras often, especially even on hogs. Because as much as a deer's nose works to its advantage, a hog's is even more so. They can't see worth nothing, so they are using that nose all the time. You get in there, start checking game cards, or SD cards on those trail cameras, and you can push a group of hogs into nocturnal real quick, basically. So what we end up doing is using cell cams to our advantage, basically, and be able to monitor these hogs and go, oh, they're coming in every evening at 7 p.m. Let's go in there, set up about 6:15, and sweat it out for just a little bit and wait on them to come in. And it's just a fun way to hunt. There's no sometimes like people want to make hunting not worthy if it's not hard, and sometimes I'm like, you know what? When I was 10, I didn't hunt because it was hard. I hunted because it was fun, and I'm kind of in the same boat these days too. So, but with the cell cameras, we wanted to talk specifically about these things, cut to the chase, and get to talking about some of the best ways to maximize battery life, because that's something that people have an issue with across the board with cell cameras sometimes. Ways to take advantage of also SD card space, or in some cases you may not even need an SD card. We'll find out at some point. And then also just some of the best ways to find these bucks, and basically organize all your photos and stuff like that, so that when you go in, you look at barometric pressure or wind or weather patterns or whatever, that you can find that stuff easily and really just like dial it in on some of these bucks. So with that said, I just want to kind of open it up to you, man. Give us some of the new features that are coming out with some of these cameras. Talk about them a little bit and kind of tell us why this stuff can help us, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear you loud and clear. And yeah, first I'll touch on the battery life thing because, that's the one thing we hear about the most. And it's like, man, these and you see it on social media and it doesn't matter the brand. It's like, gosh, these cell cams eat through batteries, and it's like, yeah, they absolutely can eat through batteries. And the cool thing is with a cell cam, you hop on your phone, your camera may be the next state over, it may be hours away, but you get on your phone and you can change those settings at the drop of a dime. So that's what's cool. So you don't have to go back to that camera to mess with it, but inside the settings, you can save battery life tremendously. And there's a few things that I always recommend to guys. And a lot of times is, the folks that you see commenting on these cameras eat batteries, they're typically newer to running cell cams. So, there's a little bit of a learning curve in that aspect. And the first thing I'll tell guys, and it's the one thing everyone that gets a cell camera for the first time wants to do. You want to put that bad boy on immediate mode because you want to see when it's like, man, look what's at my tree stand right now. Look what's at the feet. It's cool, right? Like that's why we run them. And anyone that runs a cell camera, there's very few people that are like, yeah, I'm going to go back. I'm not going to run cell cams anymore. They see it and they're like, this is awesome. I see where this is going to change the game. And they put it on that immediate mode. Well, first thing I tell guys, my hunting property is an hour away. So that's not terrible, but I've got a family. I've got kids that play sports. I got a job. I honestly can't get there very much. I mean, it's every few weeks during the season, even at best. And so what I do on my cameras, because I want the most battery life I can get, I put those on. I only have those cameras uploading images to the app or the server twice a day. So twice a day, my cameras are going to check in and upload those images, whether they got one image or 20 images or 30, they're only going to check in twice a day. And the reason that's important is each time the camera connects to the server, so it's a cloud-based server, every time it's doing that connection, and that's where it's usually using the cellular signal, that is a huge power suck on that camera. It is using batteries at that point. Now, uploading the image is relatively, untaxing, if you will. It's using a small amount of power. It's that connecting to the server that's the huge battery drain. So if you can cut that down and have those cameras checking in less often, you're immediately going to see a giant leap in battery life. And when I say giant, I mean going from a couple weeks to a couple months. It's that big of a deal. So that's the first thing I tell guys. The second thing is, if you're a guy that likes to run videos and get videos, these cameras take awesome videos. I mean, beautiful quality night and day videos. They've got audio. I fully recommend running it. However, a video is going to burn batteries like crazy as well. That camera's on the entire time. It's a big drain on that camera to record video, 15 seconds at a time. And then if you think about this, every time it's doing it at night, it's also running the flash. And that's a constant on. So, man, that's another big power drain. So videos will drain your cameras. And if you're a video guy, then I highly recommend that you also invest in a solar panel or some kind of external power option. That is going to run your camera. If you've got a solar option hooked to your camera and it's getting, 5-6+ hours of sunlight a day, you're not even going to have to change those batteries. You can run that camera, connect it immediately, run video. You don't even have to mess with it anymore. So I always like to tell guys that because cell cameras do use more power. So, go ahead and get a solar option. They're affordable and just try it out. And once you see what it does and you're like, man, I don't even have to go to my camera anymore to mess with it. it's a big deal. And let's face it, gas prices, that's a money saver in no time, different that. So those two things alone are going to really improve your battery. And also, if you're on a feeder or a food plot where there's a lot of activity, I would probably take that camera off of like burst mode too. Just have it do one image, because you're going to see what's coming through. And like our feeders, we get a ton of does on them. So I know we're going to get a bunch of does. So I go ahead and I set the detection delay up as well. And I might have that running on a minute, so my camera's not just flashing away, taking pics. It's getting a little break. And those few things, I mean, if guys will just tweak those few things I mentioned, have it upload twice a day, take it off video mode and put a detection delay on there, they are going to see a giant increase in battery life. If you don't even want to mess with that, get a solar option, and then you're done. You don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Run it like you want to.
People think about the battery life thing as like an expenditure, and it definitely is, because batteries aren't cheap, especially good ones. But the intrusion factor of not having to go in and mess with your camera, so for one thing, check the card, right? Because that's what the benefit of a cellular camera is. But two, it doesn't do you a lot of good to have a cell cam if you're going in every month to put new batteries in it, or I guess it still does, but it's not as beneficial as it is like being able to leave one out 6 months with no worries, right? So it's a huge part of it not having that intrusion of going in there and messing with that thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I run my cameras, like I said, on feeders in the wintertime when you've got cold weather. So that works against those alkaline batteries more too. But, I'm only changing batteries even without a solar option. I'm going, 3 months, several months, and I'm getting uploaded images every night, every day. So I'm keeping tabs and I'm not going in there to mess with it. In fact, really, I kind of just, I'll just change those batteries when we go fill that feeder, we have a long season here. So, we may fill that feeder probably 3 times in a season, and I'll just swap batteries, but I've even got good battery life at that point. That way we're only going in there once, boogering it up a little bit, and then we're gone,
Yeah. So, let me ask you this on that battery saving thing as well. Does the PIR sensitivity matter too much? You explained to us the other day what that meant. Does that change as far as just how many pictures your camera takes or how sensitive it is? Does that help with that any?
Yeah, so this time of year, yes, that can absolutely help. So again, you're able to adjust that, and this time of year, if you've got a camera and it's out in the open and it's getting sun beating down on grass or leaves, things like that, and those are blowing, that's where you're going to get those images and you're like, man, there's nothing in this. Why is this happening? And the reason this time of year that's a factor is PIR is, we call it motion detection just for ease of, explaining it. It's like, okay, something walks in front of it, triggers a picture. I can grasp that. But what that PIR sensor is actually doing, it has quite a few points that it's actually measuring the ambient air temperature. So it's getting a reading, an average of the air temperature, and it's using multiple points. It's not just like one spot out there. And what it's doing is when something passes in front of that camera with a difference in temperature, it's telling that camera to snap a photo. Well, in the summertime, when the ambient temperature, it may be 90 degrees, whatever. Well, when that sun's beating down on the, metal or plastic side of a feeder, that's getting hotter. When it's hitting those blades of grass and leaves and things that are going to move in and out of those zones, that's actually, the surface is actually hotter than the ambient air temperature, and you're getting those triggers. So what you can do, especially this time of year, is just put that sensitivity on low. And that's going to help reduce those images that are, false images that are getting taken. And so that's a big thing. And then another thing is, if you're able to try to get that camera located in a shaded area. Now I know that's not possible everywhere. Here in Alabama, we got a lot of trees, so it's easier to do. But that does make a difference. Now, once you get into the cold months, the fall, winter months, you see those false triggers. They don't happen much. You don't see it because, the sun, like you guys are talking about, you can see the sunsets. There's a difference in the angle. Well, that sun isn't near as intense, right? So it's not heating up the surfaces of things like it does in the summer, and you don't really experience that. So it's you can set that PIR up at a higher rate then.
Yeah. So I think I have an understanding of this, but I think you're going to be able to help me a little bit more. When a camera is uploading an image or it's trying to connect to the server, I'm kind of unsure of this. It actually isn't taking pictures when it's doing that. Is that correct? It is.
Yeah.
So another advantageous thing to set in the camera to where it's, a twice a day upload is that it's able to always capture. If you set it for immediate and say you don't have great service where the camera is, you can run into some issues where you're missing deer just because it's just the nature of what a cell camera has to do to be able to upload an image, right?
You're absolutely right. And it doesn't matter what you're running, that's how a cell camera works. Mm-hmm. And that's a great point because, we'll have guys that will set up their regular camera next to their cell camera. It's just that they're testing it out, right?
Yeah, sure.
And nothing wrong with that. That's great. But then they'll come back and say, man, these cell cams don't pick up near as much as my regular cam. Like, I've got 100 images here, whereas I've only got, and these are arbitrary numbers, but 50, 60, it's missing a lot. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not wrong. It is missing. But then when you ask the question, hey, what do you have your upload set to? Oh, I got it on immediate. Well, every time it snaps a photo when it's in immediate mode, it instantly starts that connection with the server. And while it's doing that, it cannot take another image. So it's got to finish that cycle out of the connection, go back into its regular mode, and then it can snap another image. And then it's going to do it all over again. So anything moving in front of that camera during that connection phase is not going to be captured. And that's another huge reason for running it on fewer times a day on your uploads. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So is that during the upload and the server connection that both, anytime it's doing that, either one of those, that's what's happening?
Yeah. So once it starts the connection process and it connects and it's uploading, it won't take any images until that connection is done. And then it shuts off the cellular connection, and then it's back into, trigger mode at that point.
Yeah. So does that mean it's advantageous to try to hang a camera in the best service you possibly can, as long as it's, within the area of, where you feel good about getting the pictures you want?
Oh, for sure. And don't get me wrong, where I hunt, we it's rural. It's a lot of terrain, a lot of hills. It's at the end of the southern Appalachians. And so we have pretty spotty cell service there, and I get all my images. So yes, you're correct. It may be that it takes longer to upload. So like to your point, if your cell signal's weaker, it's going to take longer during that connection phase. So you will miss longer periods of times where it's not taking a picture. Everything's just going to operate better if you can get that camera in an area where it's got a stronger signal.
So let's talk about the signal a little bit, because I know that's a big question. We get it a lot, just in messaging and stuff. Talk about maybe best ways to, make sure that you have good service in an area, and maybe different features that can help you just get the best cell service that you can in an area.
Yeah, in the easiest way, look, there's maps online. We have them on our website that show the coverage zones for AT&T and Verizon. But like I do, in a localized area, you might have terrain features that are blocking cellular coverage when you're, down in a valley or something. And it's like, man, this this is the spot. This is where I need a camera. So, you know, it sometimes those maps, it's hard to go off of, right? It's not going to necessarily be true in every spot. But, you know, the general rule, if you have a cell phone and you're on a hunting property, you know which service gets the best coverage. And if you've got your phone and you're in an area, if you can place a call out of there, you'll be fine. You will absolutely be fine to run your camera there. If you can get a text out of there, that's kind of the way I use it. Like at my place, Verizon is the best. Mm-hmm. So I have a Verizon phone. Anywhere I can get a text out, I may not even be able to place a call, but I can get a text. I'm getting my images from that spot, and I don't have any trouble there. So that cell phone test is a good one, but you know, you were mentioning we have a new camera out. That was one of the things when this camera was being designed. It's the new camera is called the Edge from Ultramobile. We designed that to kind of help out and eliminate that issue. So the Edge actually will run on multiple cell carriers, and when you turn it on in your hunting spot, wherever you're going to hang it, that camera starts searching right away for the strongest cellular signal for that area, for right there. And it will automatically pick the strongest one and connect to it. So you may be on Verizon, AT&T, you know, T-Mobile. You don't know what it's going to be on, but it's going to select the one that's the strongest. And, you know, another question we get when it comes to that, it's like, well, my cell phone's Verizon. Will this camera work? Absolutely, because it's all through Multrimobile. So it doesn't matter who your cell phone provider is. This isn't going on your cell phone bill. And so that's one of the new features that I like and that's going to help guys out. And the other thing it doesn't pigeonhole a guy into selecting one carrier. So like our Delta base model that's out right now, you know, you have to select that up front. Do you want Verizon? Do you want AT&T? So you really got to know going in, like, hey, I know I need Verizon. I know I need AT&T. But with that new Edge camera, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You just buy the Edge. It'll find the strongest signal for you.
Dude, that's a dream scenario for my dad.
Yes.
Dude,
Yes, all of our dads.
He's the guy, man, that, like, you know, he sends me, why isn't, you know, OnX property lines working on my app? And I'm like, when's the last time you updated your OnX app? And it's like, never. Okay, well, you might should do that and your iOS while you're at it.
You know what else is a dream scenario on that is that Edge doesn't have a lot of buttons.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like and the camera is like, it looks different than the other ones that y'all have had, you know, the other Multrimobile cameras, and it's kind of more streamlined. It's got some other design stuff, right?
No, you're right. And so the first thing our guys do when they go into to design a new camera is how can we make it more user-friendly, easier to operate, easier to set up? And the way we know what to look at and do is because our customers tell us and we listen to what they say. And look, we've got customers, and I'm one of them. I am not a techie guy if we just get down to it. Mm-hmm. I just need it to work. I need it to be easy. I don't really want to use my brain a lot, you know, and so these cameras are great. You've got a switch on, off, and then you've got one button that you can hold down to take a test photo when you set that camera up, have it sent right to the app so you can make sure you got that thing set up properly.
That's such a big deal, man. That test photo thing is like a huge addition because it's, you know, you don't want, well, let me say it this way. I don't want a cell camera that has an LCD screen because that's another thing to run battery down, right? It's another thing that costs more money. It's weight. It's all kinds of stuff, right? And why do you need that when you have like a almost $1,000 phone in your pocket where you can just send the picture to, and then you can just use everything on the app, you know? And it's just, that's pretty ideal to be able to just press that button and get a picture.
Well, it's huge because then then you can adjust your camera. Mm-hmm. And hey, once you do that, press it again. Make sure you got it right. Like, don't leave until you got it, you know, like you want it. And the other thing that does, it gives you the confidence. Hey, this camera, there is enough cell signal here for this camera to send images out. So it not only helps you set it up, it gives you that assurance before you leave, like, hey, this is going to work here. Because, the one thing that you do have to have enough signal to transmit out on a cell camera, right? So, if there's not a cell signal there, it's not going to transmit.
Yeah.
And you should move from Nebraska.
We can do. Yeah, right. And there's nothing we can do about that.
That's right, man. It's going to take some petitions to make that change, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the battery situation is a little different on the new Cam too, right?
Yeah, so it's got a couple options. So it's a tray feature, so it's not like built into the housing anymore. It's got a drop down tray, and it will hold. You can put 8 batteries on one side and pop that back in, and that camera's running at peak performance. It's great. Or it's got another side for 8 more batteries. You can pop in 8 more and run 16 and increase that battery life, double that battery life. That way you can stay out longer, have that camera running longer without going in there. So, we like to give guys the option. Some folks see it and say 16 batteries, like crap, that's a lot of batteries. And it's like, well, you don't have to run. You can run 8. It'll run just fine on 8. You're just going to get longer battery life running the 16. So, it gives the user options. That's where it's nice.
One thing I think is neat about the removable battery tray, and you haven't advertised this, so you can tell me I'm stupid if you want to, but I'm still going to say it. I think you could probably buy maybe some battery trays from y'all if you're the kind of guy who has a lot of cameras. Pre-fill those things, and instead of having to sit there and sort all your batteries out and all, you could just swap battery trays, or say you have one extra one laying around. You don't have to sit there because the battery tray comes out. You can just pop the fresh one in there and take the other one with you and dump the batteries out when you get home.
It's like a loaded clip in a handgun.
Yeah,
huh?
exactly. I think it'd be pretty slick.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is something that will be offered. The new Edge camera just launched last Monday, so I think, and I'll check while we're talking, but I don't know if those are available right now, but yes, we have those are going to be available. You're going to be able to get those for the new Edge camera.
Yeah, that'd be pretty slick. All right, so let's talk about the app a little bit too, because that's the whole thing. That's the kind of the axle of how these things run, right? It ain't 2018 around here, right, guys? We're in the 2020s now, all right? So whenever you get pictures, it doesn't come to your email. It's all run through the Moultrie mobile app, and we use this thing. And honestly, it's probably one of my favorite things about the Moultrie mobile system. It's what kind of seems to set you apart.
Dude, no lie, KC's on Moultrie mobile app more than on Instagram, Facebook, any of it. Like, he's all over the thing. And he's a TikTok fan now too. So
no.
Like,
No. I'm just good at it. I hate it, but I'm good at it. But
humble brag.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a good dancer. Man, when you start running a decent amount of cameras, and that's, you can afford a decent amount of these things. They're not like the $300 cameras like that used to be with the cell cams, like there's some features on the app that really help you with that stuff. And the first thing that I really like is the tags, right? Or what are they called? They're species tags pretty much, right?
Yeah, I mean, Moultrie Mobile, we call them smart tags.
Smart tags,
It's species recognition. It's artificial intelligence software that's built in, automatically scans every image that uploads, gets scanned through it, and it picks out the individual animals in it, whether it's a deer, a buck, a turkey, a hog, bear. It's quite a few. In fact, it's got people and vehicles as well. So we have customers that use this purely as a security option on their remote properties or where they got their RV parked, because you can set up notifications for these smart tags. So if a person or vehicle shows up in an image, and you're going to get the notification that says that, and you can react at that point with it, call the authorities, whatever.
Yeah, man, it's pretty cool. The other thing that's nice on that I use a lot is like the save searches thing. because I got cameras in a couple states right now, and that's not applicable for every guy, but a lot of people are at least hunting more than one property, and you can get on and see what's going on at X property or Y property. I got one that's the farm, and I just go look at that thing because it's not the cameras we're hunting hogs on, but I want to know what's going on at the farm right now so I can go see what deer are showing up, and I don't have to go through and select the specific camera. It's pretty nice to be able to do that.
That's awesome. And that's one that I have not really taken advantage of myself. So I'm going to have to go check that out.
Oh, it's super cool, man. It's right there. Whenever you start selecting cameras or whatever, it's like you select like the right, I don't know, drop down or whatever, and you can go in and save a search. I got one that's Texas Public, and I got one that's the farm, and can see what's going on different places.
I like it. That's cool.
So there's the new Edge. Also, one thing that you guys are getting rid of, and you may have mentioned this, but the SD card is no longer a thing.
It's kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, it is, and I'll be honest, that's going to take some folks getting used to, because we've all been trained, if you run a digital cell camera or digital camera, you got to have an SD card, and so that's the one that probably is going to be like, well, is that better, or is that? And here's why it's better. Again, it all goes back to when our guys are engineering a new camera, they're trying to make it better than anything before. It needs to function better. It needs to be more user friendly. Well, when folks call up and talk to customer service and they say, hey, my camera's not connecting. Well, our team, they can go in the logs, they can look at all these different codes, and it tells, hey, here's what's wrong. And the overwhelming majority of the time, it's an SD card issue. Now, that could be the wrong SD card was purchased. It could be the SD card has been corrupted. The SD cards are, they make those like potato chips. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with those things.
Yeah.
And
it's funny
I know
that.
you guys have experienced it. You've popped one in, it's a new one, and it's like, why isn't this working? Well, it's those SD cards can be corrupted, or they may just need to be formatted, or you accidentally, while it's in your pocket, you click that little lock tab down. Well, guess what? It's not working. It's not going to work at that point. And so it's usually an SD card issue when there's a connection issue. So that's why our team removed that, because that was the pinch point. That was the pain point. That's where so many troubles arise. And so they got rid of that. Yeah. So now you're not even worrying about that. It's internal memory. It's not getting corrupted. It's not, you didn't buy the wrong SD card. And at the end of the day, the new Edge camera is $100, $99.99, and now you don't have to buy a $15, $20 SD card to go in it too.
And you're saving people a penny on that $100 deal, at $99.99.
Absolutely.
And also, there you go.
And saving a penny.
Also, well, another thing that KC made a great point about this, and I didn't think about it till then, but it's a good point for us that hunt public land. The thing that we always worry about is stolen cameras, right? But as much as anything, I have heard so many people say this. It's like, man, the camera was like a $80 or $90 camera. It's not the end of the world. But the SD card was sitting in there for 2 months, and now I don't know what was in there. And I spent, time and effort and sweat and all this stuff going in a mile to hang this camera. Well, if there's no SD card to steal, then they're going to have a hard time stealing your intel. You know what I mean? You got it on your
whole camera.
It's on your phone. Yeah. So it's a good thing,
Yeah, and you're right. And yes, the camera gets stolen. That really stinks. But there's no way for them to get that info out of there. But you're going to have it all. It's going to be all uploaded to your app anyways. And one thing, we get a lot of questions with the no SD card. The camera's been out a week, so we're getting the questions coming in. It's like, well, how do I get my high res images and videos and stuff off of it? I always just pulled the SD card. Well, all that's still coming to the app, and you would just request those. So if you got a really nice image or something you wanted to zoom in on, you just hit that high res request, and that's going to come in next time it checks in. Same with the video. You're going to get that thumbnail of what the video is. Is it a nice buck? Does it look like a cool scenario, something getting chased, or is it a predator? Something you might want to see the video on. You just click upload and you'll get that video sent to you. And I had one guy I was talking to yesterday. He's on the standard plan, and that has per month it's like 10 video uploads. And he's like, well, what if he's like, man, so I can only upload 10 videos. I said, in the standard plan that every month you get 10. I said, but for $1, you can get a 50 additional video uploads for that. So, I mean, literally for $1, you now have 50 more. And then, if you're on an unlimited plan, then you just upload away.
Dude, you're bring me back to my old track phone days back in high school. You pay $10 and get 1,000 text messages or whatever. It's good times back then. So,
hey man, that's right. Especially if you got a brand new girlfriend,
That's right, dude. I know, man. The girls were expensive back then. It was like
still are.
They still are for sure.
They just have access to your bank account now.
That's right. So let me ask you this too, Mark. Conditions whenever bucks are active are real important to people, and I know it's pretty standard on all cell cams, right? And especially Moultrie Mobile, they have all kinds of different stuff on here, moon phase, temperature.
See, I was
going to
mention this because we have a guy. You talked about potato chips earlier.
Yeah.
We have this guy named Hunter who likes to call his SD cards chips.
Yep.
Which that sounds like something that at least 60-year-old would say, but he's 26 or whatever. Anyway, he's a big moon phase fan. So like I was thinking the same thing, KC. Like,
so is that stuff programmed to the camera, or is the camera actually bouncing this like local weather data down to like the closest weather station to the camera?
Yeah. So these cameras, and you're probably getting a little too technical for me.
Oh, come on. You're way smarter than I am.
We hire people way smarter than me to work on this stuff. So, that's why I sleep good at night, because we got legit people on this stuff. But so that camera, it has that data. So it's not pulling weather info, but the moon phase is, it's a set thing.
Yeah, that's constant. Yeah.
Over time, so it's built in. So the camera knows what's the moon phase that's going on, but the temperature, that's something that's, that sensor is in the camera. So it's pulling that barometric pressure. That's a sensor that it's pulling from. So it's bringing in that data. So every time you have an image upload, it's carrying that data with it. So you got also, I failed the time of day, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a time on there. So you got time of day, you've got moon phase, and you got temperature. And so the Moultrie Mobile has a feature inside the app called activity charting. And that's a really cool feature. What it does is it pulls that data in that we're talking about. It feeds it into these graphs, like pie charts or bar graphs. Real easy stuff to see. It's got nice color. It's like a picture book, right? Mm-hmm. And so it shows the activity off of your cameras, and it lays it out. So there's one graph that shows time of day. So it's going to show peak activity based on time. It's got another that's showing the moon phase through the month. It's going to show you activity based on that. And then the other one is temperature. So it's going to show you temperature ranges where that activity. So you can start putting puzzle pieces together. And on activity charting, you can select a date range. So, say like, hey, I was busy this week. I really didn't get a chance to pay attention to my images coming in. Or even if you forget day to day what the weather was doing. You can put in, like, say your last 5 days, and you can get a activity readout for those three things. And the other cool thing, you can go in there and you can use the smart tag feature. So now you say, okay, it's getting to the rut. I don't care about, the movement of raccoons and does, whatever showed up. I want to know what the heck the bucks have been doing. Mm-hmm. Well, click on buck, and that's going to give you a readout of activities only for bucks. And so, those are the things that inside the app that just change the game. If all you want to do is look at the images and see what's coming through, you can absolutely do that. But if you're one of these guys that really get in and they're following the weather and stuff, and like activity charting, you don't have to be a scientist or a meteorologist to figure this stuff out. It does it for you, and you're just like, dang, look, man, they're the last few days they're moving at 10 o'clock in the morning. We need to be hunting midday.
Man, that's a scary thing to do. But
yeah,
it'll work,
dude. It's so cool. We're looking at this stuff while you're talking about it, and so what I would suggest is if you're listening to this podcast, that if you don't have the app, it'd be good to get it. And just to look through some of this stuff, but especially if you do have the app, while you're listening to this, go back and listen to it even, and look at the stuff that he's talking about here. It's insane. We're looking at some of the stuff in like buck movement around some of our cameras right now, and it is cool, man. Like we're looking at the moon phase right now, and there's like a
92% of almost like
there's
vast
probably
majority,
about 80% of movement around this like
waning crescent.
Yeah. Anyway, it's like, it's cool, dude. It's really good stuff. And it's just, if you're listening and you're sitting there thinking, this Mark Olis guy sounds like a pretty nice guy. He actually is. Like, Mark is one of the coolest, best. I mean, we appreciate your friendship, man, what you guys do, and just like your commitment to just making the product easier for people to use and better. I mean, it's a commitment to making hunting easier. And as much as people want to talk about conservation and how, putting more wildlife on the landscape is important, the experience that the user has while they're out there is very much a huge part of whether they are retained as a hunter. You know what I mean? Like, if we're not having fun while we're out there, it's drudgery. You're not seeing anything. It's not. There's a lot of people who just kind of like to do it a little bit that are just going to quit and go play games or do something different, get into church league softball or whatever, So this is
about a fast call. Preacher breaking up the fight.
This is a commitment though to hunter retention, I guess, as much as anything. And I appreciate what you guys do. I appreciate, like I said, your friendship. And you guys have really worked on making a product better and better in just the short time, the couple of years that we've been using the Moultrie mobile cameras. So we appreciate you, man. What's the best way for people? I mean, you can actually download this app for free, right? And take a look around on it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So if you just go to the iTunes or the App Store, wherever you go to get your app, and search Moultrie Mobile and download the app. It's completely free, and you don't even have to set up an account. So just download it, and then if you scroll down, you'll see a button on there. It says Demo. Hit that demo, and that is actually tied to a half dozen cameras that are out on hunting properties now. And so you can actually use it. That is the full-fledged, all the features in the app on that demo version. So just like you said, you can use the activity charting, you can use the mission and all that. And the other thing I want to say, the app is free even when you create an account. And all these features are free. So we don't, species recognition, you don't have to pay us extra money per month to use that. It's yours to use when you download the app. And, all of these features are free. And the other thing is, your images are your images. We value that. We don't delete images off of here. So again, we're not asking you for extra money just to keep your images. Those images live there 24/7. They're yours. We don't mess with them. Hey, season's over. You cancel your subscription because you're not hunting anymore. Well, all of that's still available to you. So that's just the freedom of using the Moultrie mobile system. And yeah, anyone out there that's looking at cell cams, interested, just go download the demo and check it out. I think you'll see how, man, I could really see how this could really help me in my hunting, whether that's on private or public.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Man, I think it's awesome. And we really appreciate what you guys do, like I said, with the app and just who you are, man. Your friendship is has been good, man. And we hopefully one day we'll be able to catch some crappie over there in Alabama or something together. And,
oh man,
hang out.
I'd love it. Or heck, I'll come out there and skewer some of them hogs with you guys.
Bring it on, dude. Bring it on.
We need help.
Yeah. No, that's great stuff, man. And I'm hoping that this is helpful to people as they go into the season because, world's busy, and this kind of stuff right here is what helps us to just maximize time away from our families and even with our families, and just, if you got kids, setting them up on a place that has good activity is what we want, right? And knowing that going in, man, that's good.
Absolutely. And just one final thing, I was on my app last week, and believe it or not, I had a big old black bear on camera, and I've never seen a black bear anywhere I've hunted in Alabama ever in all my years. So, even this time of year, I know we're looking at antlers and everything like that, but you just don't ever know what's going to come across. It's awesome.
That's cool, man. Well, hopefully the first real Bigfoot will end up on a multi-mobile camera.
We'll send it in. I'll get a high risk.
Yeah. Please send it to us.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on and helping us through this thing, man. And, best of luck this year. I'm sure we'll be talking more.
Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, and I wish y'all all the success, and stay safe this fall.
All right.
And that is how you use cell cameras to kill big bucks, guys. Like we were saying a while ago, that actually happened in Oklahoma. Be pumped for that film. It's going to be sick. And by the way, I was wearing a First Light Catalyst jacket and a First Light hoodie in there, and probably a Brooks Down as well. Those are all pieces that you can find on sale for the First Light season opener.
Just think if you could have got that stuff for 40% off.
Golly, I know. I felt way better about it. But guys, it's good gear. We use it. We love it. And you need good gear because your gear is going to help you stay out there chasing the deer longer when it's cold. And right now is the time to get it because it is on a discount. So remember to go do that. There is a link in our the description down below to help you find that stuff. And that helps us out too, by the way, guys. We really appreciate that. We appreciate y'all's support in general. Thank y'all for sticking around for a 17-hour podcast like we just had. Thank y'all for coming to the events that we have and just supporting us in general. And if nothing else, those y'all that just reach out on social media and just give us some fist bumps and stuff like that, we appreciate that about near more than anything else.
Mr. Bowmaster, you're the man, dude. Mr. Bowmaster and Dead Drifter, the guys I see on the live videos on Instagram every morning when I'm shooting my bow. I appreciate you guys, and it's kind of like just seeing an old friend every morning.
Gary McWilliams, dude. That guy's always reaching out.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, good dude, man. All y'all, thank y'all for the support through the years, honestly. We've been doing this for a while. And we are very thankful to have made a lot of friends doing this stuff. So remember that you matter to us. And remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer is going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.